Greetings, fellow Earthlings, and welcome to the 60s! This is a 1964 Porsche 356C. Now, if you're watching this from the future, you probably think this is a very pretty car, and I would agree with you. It is beautiful from every angle. But you future folk are probably also thinking of Porsche as a titan of international design and manufacturing that gives Ferrari and Lamborghini a run for its money. Well, here in the 1960s, none of that has happened yet. For a start, a lot of people are still living in black and white. Charlie Chaplin is still making movies, for Pete's sake, and the Beatles just came out with their second album, and the #1 at the box office is some kids movie called Mary Poppins, which is in colour. It's a different time. Let's say you do want to buy a Ferrari in 1964 and you can't quite stretch to the 250 GTO, then you're going to be looking at their regular road car, which is a 3-litre V12 Ferrari Lusso, and that will accelerate from 0 to 60 in a very respectable 8 seconds. Though it will cost you $14,000. And that might seem very reasonable to you future folk, but here in the 60s, you can buy a decent house for $14,000. Anyway, what about Lamborghini, you may say? Well, in 1964, that's their very first year of making any car. And they have one model. It's the 3.5-litre 350 GT. That will accelerate from 0 to 60 in a blistering 7 seconds, though that also costs as much as a house. How about something a bit more down to earth? Well, in 1964, you have the C2 Corvette, a very reasonable $4,200, and that will do 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. So how about this 356C then? Well, in 1964, it cost the same as the Corvette, though it has just a 1.6-litre flat 4, and on a good day, it will do 0 to 60 in 13 seconds. And so you can see in the 60s, Porsche are nowhere near achieving the lofty performance numbers of the Italian supercars or the American muscle cars available for sale today. So what comparable cars are potential Porsche owners looking at in 1964? Well, Ferry Porsche is quoted as saying that with enough power, a small car is nicer to drive than a large car that's overpowered. And in spirit, that sounds a lot like the famous quote from Lotus designer Colin Chapman: simplify and add lightness. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that yes, the 356 compares well with other lightweight European roadsters of the day, like the Lotus or Triumph or MG. Like the 356, the Lotus Elan has a 1.6-litre engine, though its inline-4 generates better performance all round. Even the bargain-priced MGB looks like a better performer on paper. Despite good looks, great build quality and a few racing trophies, in 1964, Porsche have been making the same car for 14 years with just incremental changes. In 1964, the big news for this 356C was that it was going to have disc brakes on all 4 wheels, which is still pretty high-tech for 1964, especially when you consider that the Corvette still has ye olde drum brakes. In 1964, the 356 is getting long in the tooth. Compared to other cars on the market, it's just overpriced and underpowered. And you can see why Porsche needed the more powerful 6-cylinder 911 that also came out this year. Though good luck trying to buy one, they only made 232 911s this year, compared to almost 10,000 356Cs. Anyway, I promise I'm going to take you for a ride in this really soon. But first, have you ever had trouble telling the difference between all the different models of 356s? I certainly have, and so here's a really quick way of knowing what you're looking at. Here we go. If it has an aluminum body, it's one of the 44 early 356s made in Gmund, Austria. If it has a split or bent windshield, it's referred to as a Pre-A. If it has a low bumper and a short raked windshield, it's a lightweight 356 Speedster. If it has a low bumper and a smooth windshield, it's a 356A. If it has raised bumpers and nipples on the hubcaps, then it's a 356B. If it has raised bumpers and flat hubcaps, it's a 356C. Of course, there have been dozens of other subtle and not so subtle changes to these cars over the years, but now that they're not making anymore, that should be a good start to get you going. And speaking of going, would you like to go for a ride? I do have the keys here somewhere. Small problem though, I have yet to be born. Hold on, stand by. Hey, you made it! So the point I'm trying to make here is that even when these cars were brand new, they were never fire-breathing performance machines. And that was 60 years ago. So driving this car today, to me at least, feels less like driving a sports car and more like I'm looking after a museum piece. While old cars like this one can certainly look cool compared to modern cars, one thing that they don't mention in the glossy magazine photos is the smell. This car, like so many old cars, has carburetors. They're right there and they're open to the environment, and so this garage smells like gas and my eyes are burning. In addition to that, if it comes to features that we might be used to, these cars either just don't have it or it's manual. There is no central locking, there's no alarm, there's no app. There's just this key and this lock. The first thing you'll notice as you even try to get into this car is just how wide the sill is here between the door and the seats. And then the seats themselves are super squishy and bouncy, like something from an old leather couch. Not something you'd expect on a modern car or any kind of sports car for sure. The other thing too that's missing from this car is any kind of safety equipment. We have these lap belts like something you'd see on an aeroplane. You definitely don't want to hit anything while driving this car. Like a modern Porsche, we do have the key on the left-hand side, and we don't have to hold our foot on the clutch because there is no switch to try to make sure that you're doing it right. But we'll put it into neutral there just to be good. And what is missing off all 356s is a choke. Cars like this that have carburetors normally have what's called a choke, which is a button or something on the dash that in the engine will cut off a bunch of the air to the carburetor, making a really rich mixture, and that makes it easier to start a cold engine. And so with 356s not having that, sometimes they can have some personality on a cold morning, and you just have to sit there to get them to start. And then once they're started, they want to die. And some of the older cars, older 356s, have a throttle hold, kind of like a hand throttle here, that once you get it to start, you can adjust it here to hold a bit of throttle so it won't die. But the more modern 356s like this one don't have that. So I'm normally like heel and toeing it with my big old feet here to try to stop it from cutting out while still being able to use the brakes. Anyway, let's see if it'll start. We need to put the ignition on. We have the handbrake on. We're going to give a couple of presses of the gas. There we go. Brake is on, and no, almost. No. Gas. Woo! Yeah. Another thing that you don't have to do on modern cars is to rebuild the carburetors. And so this car, I haven't done it yet, but I have to rebuild the carburetors. And that should make it hopefully start a bit better and run a bit better. Anyway, let's hit the road. And we're off. Now it may seem like I don't see any positive in owning a car like this, but that's not true at all. It's definitely a thrill. It's just a different kind of thrill. When you have a performance car in the garage, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, you know, you're gonna go fast. But this, my heart beats faster just because it's so different. It's all the buttons and switches, and the fact that it's so manual, you really do have to pay attention. And it can be a good stress reliever because you've got to focus on this. You can't focus on anything else. And also there is the sobering fact that if you do hit anything, in a minor crash, the crumple zone is the fuel tank. And in a major crash, the crumple zone is your knees. And so there's no airbag also, so you're going to just headbutt the steering wheel. And that doesn't sound pleasant. Oh, here we go. Running out of power up a hill. Pardon me. The other thing too is just when you're going somewhere, I'm going to get pizza right now. But going to get pizza in this car is a thrill. It's something else, which you just wouldn't get in most other cars, even though I'll get there much slower and I might not get there at all. We have a minute here while we are waiting. Thought we'd have a look at the car. First thing that we should probably look at here is you notice that the bumpers, if there's anything under the bumpers, then that means it's a 356B or C. And then on this particular car, you'll notice how there is no bumps on the hubcaps, ixnay on the nipples, and that means that this is a 356C, which shouldn't have those fancy colored crests, but I thought they look cool. It should just have these embossed chrome things. But anyway, slight variation from original there. And going around the side, we noticed all the features that are manual. This, if you want to listen to the radio, you have to pull this up manually before you decide to do that. This is the one manual side mirror. There is no side mirror on the other side. Opening her up here. If you want AC, there is none. You just have to open this vent window and adjust that there, probably for smoking. Back in the day, there is an ashtray. And to open the door, you pull the handle down like that, but if you want to lock the door, you push it up. And this, of course, workout windows, just to confuse the young folk. Going over here, that's that sill I was talking about. And the reason that's so wide is because this car is a unibody construction car. The chassis and the body are one. And that's quite different from Volkswagen Beetles that are a body bolted onto a chassis. Another thing that's like a Beetle is these pedals hinged on the ground, and Porsche had that in the 911 right up until the 996 in the 90s. Here's the handbrake right here. Pull that up and twist it, kind of fun. And this is the pull for the to release the frunk. If we look in the back here, there we go. Oh, it does go up. The back seats are very much like a modern 911. They do fold down, and just like a modern 911, they're perfectly practical as long as your children don't age past their 6th birthday. And here, that's the pull for the engine. You may be wondering why the roof isn't down. Part of that is because I've been working on the tension rod for the windshield, and also it's a real pain. You have to undo the front, unzip the hood, or unzip the window and put the window in its little special case and fold everything back, which it doesn't really want to do. And then you have this other tonneau cover that bolts on there. So it's a bit of a thing. Oh, that's loose. Gosh, one thing after another. This car, you notice it does have the twin grills on the back. That was partway through the 356B in 1962 that they got the twin grills. Though I always expected that twin grills meant that you'd have twice as much cooling. If you look inside, it's exactly the same. It's just a single vent in that as well. So here's the engine. It is a 4-cylinder, flat 4. They originally came with a 1.6. This allegedly has been bored out to a 1750 with their big bore kit. And so that's the difference again from the Beetles. The Beetles just had like a 1.1 litre, I think, in 1964, whereas this certainly had more power and a much noisier exhaust as well. I've done quite a lot to this engine as far as electrics are concerned, and that fuel filter, but more to do here. I need to, like I said, rebuild those carburetors. And that's another thing when you're doing these, or having one of these cars, is who is gonna fix it? Like the carburetors, if I don't do it, I probably would just have to send it away in the mail, because nobody does carburetors anymore. And the other thing too is we just had the alignment done, and that the third place I brought it to finally knew how to do it. Everyone else was like, we have no idea how to do that. And it took them 4 days. It cost almost $1,000. And so that gives you an idea on, little things that will trip you up on these cars that are just nothing on a modern car. Here I've taken out the glove compartment because this is for the windshield washers, and that pipe had, I don't know, it's just come off. And so I was fixing that, and then also reattaching this tension rod, which is another reason for not having the roof down, because that tension rod provides support to the windshield area and attaches the top of the windshield to the dash, and that wasn't attached to anything. Over here we have the fuel filler right there, and I just finally got a full tank of gas in this car because I put a new fuel tank in it. And oddly enough, this car, it has the performance of a 3-cylinder Yugo, but the fuel economy of a cruise ship. But anyway, we got a full tank of fuel. That should be just about enough to get home. And that's another thing too, is if you're in like a Ferrari or a new Porsche or something, some people will appreciate it, but a lot of people don't. They don't like you. Like, they'll hate people that are in fancier cars. You know what I'm talking about. But one thing that really is striking in this car is, even though it's fancy in many respects, people will just love it. They're like, oh, cool car, and they'll smile. It like makes people happy. It has a different effect on people. And I know that when I was a kid, the 10-year-old me, wanting cool cars as you do, I wasn't necessarily thinking about people hating it. I was thinking about, it being cool and what it would be like to drive and what it feels like and all the buttons and the switches. And so with this car, it's like you're kind of sharing it with people. And that's a whole nother aspect to owning a car that I've never experienced before. And it makes this car just really enjoyable, despite the fact that it's borderline deadly and almost incapable as a form of transport. Made it! With a car like this, your family get to enjoy the dual surprise of not only a tasty pizza for dinner, but also the fact that Papa made it home at all in the German death machine. And if you enjoyed learning about this car today as much as I did, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to see future videos. If you made it this far through the video, thank you. You also have probably seen some of the other episodes and may have some questions about why I stopped posting videos for a while. And so if you look at episode 35, there is a news flash in there that explains how my spinal cord got injured. But long story short, at the beginning of this year, I still couldn't feel my hands or my legs, and my walking was getting worse. And so I went to a completely different surgeon and got all new imagery done. And they said that one of the pieces of metal that had been put in my neck before to try to help fix that injury, they'd made a mistake. And one of the pieces of metal was pushing on my spinal cord and making it that I was getting worse and not better. And in that appointment, they put a neck brace on me, and I've been in that neck brace 24/7 for the majority of this entire year. And thankfully, they did figure out some other surgical solution to help make things better. And I was able to get the brace off a few weeks ago, and I'm getting better slowly. And I think I'm going to be better than I was before the surgery, but I have to wait another year before I'm going to sort of really know where I'm at. And so thanks everybody for your patience. And I'm hoping to get some more videos out here soon. Unfortunately though, that is all we have time for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Till next time. Hold on, what's the dog doing? Oh yeah, subscribe now. Delta says thank you.